Alas, the United States of America has a new city. But in the years leading up to and following the founding of St. George, Louisiana, America's newest city, its story and pathway to incorporation have been mired in controversy and debate. So the title of the newest city in America actually depends on how you define newest. In actuality, the US sees no more than a handful of new cities in a year. New cities such as Essex Junction, Vermont, incorporated in 2021, and Erta, Utah, incorporated in 2022, are newer in founding date than St. George. But as we'll get into in a moment, efforts attempting to stop St. George from acting upon its incorporation are even still ongoing in 2024, with St. George's incorporation being so controversial that even Google Maps doesn't recognize its cityhood nor its boundaries, but it absolutely should. If you're new here, this is Fourth Place, your place to learn about US geography, transportation, urbanism, and city planning. So here are the facts. Attempts to form St. George into a new city started all the way back in 2012, when St. George organizers sought approval of the state legislature to form a new school district, but were unsuccessful. And that's really what ignited residents of the unincorporated areas that made up present-day St. George in their efforts to incorporate. Among other things, a large enough portion of the people recognized Baton Rouge's neglect to recognize the needs of a large number of its residents whose taxes made up a substantial portion of Baton Rouge's tax revenue. However, St. George's incorporation was finally approved in a ballot initiative on October 12, 2019. Upon incorporation, it became the fifth largest city in Louisiana and the second largest in East Baton Rouge Parish, with a population of 86,316. That population number would slot St. George just inside the top 300 most populous cities in the U.S., next to such cities as Santa Monica, California, Sunrise, Florida, and Trenton, New Jersey. So St. George's incorporation is no small feat. The city itself originated from a previously unincorporated area of East Baton Rouge Parish, located southeast of the city of Baton Rouge. Oh, and if you're wondering what a parish is, it's just Louisiana's funky way of saying county, basically. They do things a little different down here in Cajun country. Anyway, just 24 days after St. George's approval for city status, a legal action to challenge the incorporation of St. George was filed in the 19th Judicial District Court in East Baton Rouge Parish on November 4th, 2019. But after rulings by both the 19th Judicial District Court and the Louisiana First Circuit Court of Appeals finding that St. George had no grounds to incorporate, the decision was appealed all the way up to the Louisiana Supreme Court, which upheld St. George's incorporation in April 2024 by a 4-3 decision. The proponents of St. George argued that becoming an independent city would enable more efficient and tailored public services, leading to improved quality of life for its residents. They envisioned a community that could directly address its unique needs and aspirations, free from the broader, more complex administrative structure of East Baton Rouge Parish, who had been lackluster in their ability to provide such services. The Louisiana Supreme Court's decision to approve St. George's city status was highly controversial, particularly concerning the implications for taxes and public services. Critics argued that a creation of a new city would lead to a significant reduction in the tax base for East Baton Rouge Parish, potentially resulting in higher taxes or reduced services for the remaining residents. They feared that the secession of St. George, which includes some of the more affluent neighborhoods, would exacerbate economic disparities and leave the parish in a reduced ability to fund public services such as education, infrastructure, and public safety. Beyond the financial considerations, the approval of St. George's city status also sparked debates about social and racial implications. Opponents of the secession argued that the move could deepen racial segregation, as the demographics of St. George are predominantly white in contrast with the largely black population of Baton Rouge. Advocates for St. George's independence, on the other hand, emphasize the desire for local governance that aligns more closely with the community's values and priorities. They believe that self-determination would empower residents to build a city that reflects their vision, with improved public services, better schools, and a stronger sense of community identity. So clearly, St. George's incorporation was hotly contested by many Baton Rougians. But why would so many residents oppose such a decision? Shouldn't the people that want to form their own city have the only say, as long as they've proven its popularity and shown they can operate in such capacity? Surely people shouldn't be forced to live in a city they clearly want nothing to do with, right? Well, many Baton Rougians did not see it that way. Maybe somewhat unpopularly, I align myself with with the proponents of St. George's city status. I mean, they have a logical and compelling argument, which, tends to work best when you're dealing with a factual and logical case like this. I think local governance does allow for a more tailored and efficient use of resources, more specifically tax expenditure, which would lead to a better quality of life for St. George's residents as opposed to life as Baton Rougeans. Think about it like this. If your landlord was just taking all of your rent money for your overpriced apartment and neglecting every broken dishwasher, leaky window, and clogged drain, would you put up with that? Combine that with the apartment actively working against your efforts to terminate your lease by playing very expensive games with your last month's rent and deposit. I mean, you'd leave that place too, right? Now scale that problem by thousands. Now, in the case of your overpriced apartment, you can't really rally your fellow tenants and claim that the building is now your sovereign micro-city, although if any of you do that, let me know so I can make a video about it. But by becoming a city, St. George can directly control its budget and prioritize spending on services that matter most to its residents. This local control is particularly significant for education, as St. George has been trying for nearly a decade to have the right to create a new school district for their kids, arguing that creating an independent school district would lead to higher educational standards, more focused attention on student needs, a safer classroom environment, and overall better performance. And I just have to highlight that safety point. Baton Rouge has some of the worst crime numbers of any city in the US, with a violent and property crime rate over double that of the national average, which, as we see nationwide, spills over into the school and classroom environment. The sense of community and identity also plays a crucial role in the argument for St. George's city status. Now, those against St. George's city status have argued that St. George's incorporation efforts are downright racist. And to that, I just have to say, what isn't racist anymore? Soon enough, driving on the right side of the road will be deemed racist, based simply off the fact that it's what they've been doing since cars were invented, and those were surely racist times. But I ask you, dear audience, how are efforts of trying to escape high crime, high poverty, awful infrastructure, and irresponsible governance racist? You probably can't find an answer because, well, it's not. And I'm certainly not making a bigger deal of this than has already been made. The largely black population of Baton Rouge has been calling St. George's supporters racist for simply trying to better their lives through legal means. They couldn't do it under the tyranny of the city of Baton Rouge, so they were obligated and motivated enough to create their own city. In my view, from what I've been able to research regarding this topic, is that most of those outcries of racism were only put forth to distract from the fact that St. George wanted to take their wealthy tax base out of Baton Rouge, not for the purpose of trying to hurt Baton Rouge's black population, but to better their own. Why should St. Georgians keep sending their tax dollars to a city that doesn't value or treat them as equal? Why should they have to pay for a continuation of the destruction of this city? It's not fair to them, and they have no obligation into that system. And the decision to incorporate St. George as a city really can be seen as a microcosm of the principles that led to the 13 American colonies to declare independence from Great Britain in 1776. Just as the colonies sought greater control over their governance, finances, and community identity, the residents of St. George pursued city status to achieve similar goals on a local scale. In both cases, the pursuit of self-determination and autonomy reflects a desire for greater control over one's own destiny and a belief in the benefits of local governance. It's the ability to have your taxes go towards better public services, smarter financial management, and a stronger sense of community identity. Just as St. George believed their split from Baton Rouge would give them better control over their interests and tax dollars, the American colonies believed that local governance would better represent their interests and allow for more responsive and effective political administration, free from the distant monarchical and unresponsive British government and their outrageous taxes. They believed this so much that they went to war for it. Looking from the outside in, as someone who lives thousands of miles away from St. George and Baton Rouge, I'm glad to see that the majority of the Supreme Court sided with St. George's proponents. Following its relatively fresh Supreme Court decision ruling in its favor, St. George's organizers have already begun the creation of its new city government. Initially in charge of the handover will be a 5-member St. George Transition District created by the state legislature in 2020 that will serve as the taxing authority until an election is held to impose its municipal tax. Subsequently, Baton Rouge's city leaders will be face to face with some harsh realities of their irresponsible budgeting. They may have to cut funding to resources once funded by the tax dollars of St. Georgians. Tax dollars that Baton Rouge's city leaders undervalued and underutilized for St. George's sake. Well, if it isn't the consequences of my very own actions. Let me know what you think of these and any other developments in St. George's path to incorporation. I'll see you next week on 4th Place.